Okay, so as I mentioned, I work with a woman by the name of Eileen Connolly, and Eileen Connolly was matter of fact, her father was a member of the Golden Dawn. If you probably heard the Golden Dawn Tarot or whatever, Golden Dawn was like a ceremonial magic group and Kabbalah learning group, and so her father was a guy named Arthur Holmes, and he actually initiated her into this magic thing, and then she ended up creating her own system based on it. And when I met her in 1989, she was the leading expert on the Rider-Waite deck. She basically she knew every single she knew every single symbol in the Rider-Waite deck. She taught it when you learned with her, when you studied tarot with her. She would basically go through the profile of each card in absolute depth until she created her own deck, which we all then started using. So I came back into contact with other students of hers. Coleman Smith, yeah, Pamela Coleman Smith, exactly, exactly, the Pamela Coleman Smith deck. So I came back into contact with her. She just recently died, and what happened was basically she was like a guru, and so she had people that followed her from place to place. And so when I met her, she had just come from California, and she had students from California that came in with her. And then our students moved with her down to North Carolina, and then down to Florida, and I moved to San Francisco. And that's where I started studying astrology. But recently she died, and one of the California students has taken her place and received all of her information. And it's been this really great homecoming with us. And she's been the main person that's gotten me involved in Clubhouse. So what I thought I would do today is I would go into this Clubhouse thing. We can talk a little bit about electional astrology too, because we have more astrologers in here. I made it really simple for anybody who knew just a little bit about astrology, or I even had people just come up and say, oh, hey, what part of life do you want to make better? And they came up and I created an astrological little thing for them to do. But like I said, this will, meditation and like guided oriented meditation will be an aspect of it. Working with correspondences, working with colors, working with creating like an altar or something like that will be an aspect of this. Obviously, when if we want to get into like the little small aspects of electional astrology that make this important, but I think this will be a fun class. And each person, like, you know, Diana, I thought about your Jupiter Mars. I thought about what's going on with Layla Akbar and her marriage situation. Layla Kabiri, I thought about you and the Venus and the Saturn, and you know, everybody that, you know, Anne Louise, I thought about your new moon, you know, so everybody that's here. At this point, I've gotten to know you all quite well, and I can think about, because now I'm thinking about, and I'm getting involved with Jyotish, which is all about remedial measures. And now that I'm also back involved with, it's called Royal Road is the term that we use for our original Kabbalah cell. Now that I'm back with Royal Road, which was all about getting in there with your own karma. That's really what it was, basically around using the tarot as a way to figure out what your actual karma was and to work your way through it, etc. So I'm trying to create the same thing with the planets. So a similar type of remediation with the planets, with our astrology, in a similar way. And of course, I might not go quite so woo-woo with you guys, but I was able to go, you know, relatively woo-woo with the other group. Okay, so so this beginning is a small encapsulation of what I just talked about before we started, which was about the difference between geocentric and anthropocentric. And so the traditional astrological model is earth-centered or geocentric, and the modern astrological model is what I call anthropocentric, which means person-centered. And so especially mind of the person, right? Mind and behaviors of the person. Earth-centered, concerned with happenings and events, concerned with perfection. And of course, when we were looking at the Bonatti 146 considerations, consideration 4, which is the very first consideration that deals with delineation, it says that what all we care about, or what it is that we're really looking for, is perfection, or how a matter comes to be or is destroyed. right? And that these are the 16 ways in which a matter can come to be or be destroyed. And so that's what it's interested in. And it's also concerned with the law of resonance. And if you look further down, the law of resonance says all things which are similar and therefore connected are drawn to each other's power. And of course, this is also an adjunct concept with inferior bodies, or rather superior bodies, act upon inferior bodies. And as above, so below. So the superior bodies being the celestial realm, they act upon us in this inferior realm. And as above, so below. That's why we can look at a chart, we can look at a snapshot of the heavens at the time that you're born and look at the above and tell you what's happening in your life below. So with person-centered astrology, the concern is the psycho-spiritual development of the native. How does the astrology reflect me? Essentially, astrology in this case is being used primarily as a mirror. So what I basically brought this up first to let people know that, hey, I know that you're probably coming from this anthropocentric model, and in order for us to talk about remedies and in order for us to talk about magic, we have to shift it into an earth-centered model. And so this then comes back a little bit to what I was talking about. I don't think the anthropocentric model is as powerful. The earth-centered model is more powerful, in my opinion, because the earth-centered model, it accommodates horary astrology, it accommodates electional astrology, it accommodates natal astrology, it accommodates the weather, it accommodates mundane astrology. What I tend to find with the anthropocentric astrologers, the modern astrologers, is they want to throw a natal chart at everything and look at and immediately look at transits. Right. So when I first started talking about horary on Reddit, people had no idea what I was talking about, really had no idea what I was talking about. And they were like, okay, so what do I need to do to answer that, to do a question like that? A solar arc or blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, you do a chart for the time of the question right where you are. What? I wouldn't know how to read that chart. Someone actually, that was someone's exact thing, right? Because your astrology can't do that. And so this is really where I'm coming kind of from around that. Your astrology can't do that. All you can do is put a mirror in front of somebody. Okay, but in order to do planetary magic, we have to go to where the planets represent everything around us. And so the astrology is all around us at all times. And to work with the planets in a ritual or ritual fashion or in a magical context, we have to shift our orientation to the Earth center. So planetary signification. So of course you guys will know most of this. That you will know obviously that the planetary days are the sun for Sunday, moon for Monday, Mars for Tuesday, Mercury for Wednesday, Jupiter for Thursday, Venus for Friday, and Saturn for Saturday. That should be Saturn. And one of the things I'm gonna do this video as though I'm working with people who know next to nothing as well as you. So I'll talk about why Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus. These are names, all of these are names of Nordic gods, the Nibelungen. And so Tuesday is Tiw, and he is connected with Mars. Wednesday is Wotan, and Wotan is connected with Mercury. Thursday is Thor, and Thor is connected to Jupiter. He's got the thunderbolt, or the thunder hammer. He's got the hammer that brings the lightning. Friday is Freya, and Freya is a love goddess like Venus. And then of course we've got Saturn as well. And then also you probably know about planetary hours. If any of you have been dabbling with horary astrology or looking at, or even looking at electional, right? If you previously have been looking at planetary magic or looking at the renaissanceastrology.com site of Christopher Warnock's, you'll know that he talks a lot about planetary hours. And so let's first of all describe a planetary day. A planetary day, or a full day, starts at sunrise and ends the next sunrise. So it doesn't go midnight to midnight, it goes sunrise to sunrise. So the first hour, so let's say it's, excuse me, Sunday. Today is Sunday. The first hour of the day at sunrise will be the sun hour. And then the first hour tomorrow of the moon day will be the moon hour. And so down here, I have a list of some, this is a laptop, this is a software for laptop, and these are two apps that you can put on your phone. Astro Hours, I have that one on my phone, and Hours. Those are the three things that I'd recommend if you want to kind of have a thing with this. That's because this. Let's say you've got Jupiter opposing Mars, and that's a money problem. And you want to work on your Jupiter. That means Jupiter is having issues and problems. That means that on a Thursday, during a Jupiter hour, you could go about doing some kind of Jupiter ritual or Jupiter meditation, or we're going to talk about Planetary Charity or Planetary Charity. You could do something like that as well. The other thing I've also been talking about for those who read tarot, because some of the people in my Thursday group were tarot people, was that if you read tarot, you can basically go to the tarot and say, oh, what is the karmic thing that's going on with this planet? Because ultimately, how I'm beginning to see the chart, and this has a lot to do with what I was talking about when I started. Ultimately, the way that I'm starting to see the chart is that every planet gives its own karmic quotient, or gives its own lot. You know, your lot in life, you know, the term lot in life. So every planet gives you its lot, whatever's going on with that planet. So that means that if we can either say one thing, we can do what the anthropocentrics do and say, oh, don't bother with your chart, just get out there and do it. You know, your chart can't limit you. Your chart's just a guidepost, right? So that's basically where a lot of the moderns are. When you go to the Jyotish side, which is the complete opposite, it's, ooh, the karma is bad over here, right? Or, ooh, the karma, your karma, this is what's going on. And even Pandit Katiji, who was talking all about empowerment, was saying, you know, even when it comes to karma, that has to be paid. The karma has to be paid. If you owe it, you've got to pay it. But it's basically, are you paying it with a frown, or are you paying it with a smile? And so that's part of what we're kind of looking at too, is first of all, how to get in, seeing if we can actually negotiate with our planets or not, right? If we've got something we don't like, oh, someone's got a Venus in Virgo, we'd rather have it be in Pisces, or we'd rather have it act like this or have it act like that, or someone's got a Mars in Cancer or something like that, or someone's got a moon that's combust, or someone's, you know what I'm saying? Someone's got issues or things that are going on in their chart, then maybe this is a way that we can, and this is the Hermetic way. There could be talismans, there could be spells, there could be, etc. So in Hermetic comes from Hermes, right? So now we're kind of going into the realm of Renaissance, kind of Renaissance magic. So here are the days, and here are the hours of the days. Here are the planetary numbers. So for instance, if indeed I say, well, oh, it sounds like you've got a Jupiter problem, why don't you create a Jupiter altar and do oblations to him yourself at your home, right? So of course I'm a Hindu, so I'm always going to be talking about doing some kind of ritual puja or something like that, or some kind of ritual. So why don't you do that? So it's Jupiter's number is 4. So you could maybe have 4 candles. You could maybe have 4, well, we can find 4 things that are represented by Jupiter. It could even be something like 4 of his kind of fruit, right? Or 4 of his kind of nut, or his kind of tree, or his kind of herb, right? And so you can put that on the thing as well. And then it could be 4, and then we can even go, well, what colors does he rule, right? And so you can create this altar based on these colors. So right now we know that Jupiter has Thursday. We know already that every planet who rules the day owns the first hour of the day. Right, they're 24 hours, there's 7 planets. So each planet is going to get at least 3 times to own an hour per day. So Jupiter will, if it's a Jupiter day on Thursday, then right at sunrise, the minute that the sun rises over the horizon, the Jupiter hour has begun. Excuse me. And that could be a really good day for doing, or good time for doing any kind of Jupiter related ritual. One second. I just lost my page. Oh, here we go. Okay, so let's look at the colors then. And also let's look at the flavors. There was something else that kept coming up too. But I forget what it was. There was something else that came up that I thought I wanted to, that I realized that I hadn't included, but I wanted to, but I'll remember. I think as we go on, I'll remember. So as you can see, Saturn is the black. And what I didn't tell them is that, well, first of all, what I told them was I would not suggest working with Saturn. That was the first thing. I basically said, if it was a Saturn issue or a Saturn problem, I basically usually suggested using something else like the sun. Of course, right? Because Saturn's planets or Saturn's signs oppose both of the signs of the lights. So, and the moon is a reflection of the sun. So I thought if it's a Saturn issue, what you really need more than likely is more sun related energy. So I remember, or if it was a Capricorn related issue, then I would say use Mars or something like that. But generally, I say don't really work with Saturn. So, but the color's black. If you're going to have to work with him, use a white candle or use white instead. Would that vary based on the condition of the planet, or should you never use Saturn? You know, that's a really good question. The issue is that Saturn is a downer. Let me tell you a really interesting story. There's a Vedic astrologer, an American Vedic astrologer and Ayurvedic doctor by the name of Robert Svoboda, Dr. Robert Svoboda. And Dr. Robert Svoboda wrote a book called, I forget, it was called The Something of Saturn. It became kind of a well-known book in Jyotish in around the 90s when I was starting to learn it. The something, I forget, the blah, blah, blah of Saturn. I forget what it was. So as you all know, I've only ever paid. Oh, wait, you're going to tell us what it is? The greatness of Saturn. Thank you. Okay. So thank you, Layla. I love how you're like you tend to be like my little, not my little, but my super efficient assistant here. So I went to this, if you remember, I've only been to one convention. I've only paid to go to one convention in my life, and that was in San Diego in 1994 to this Jyotish, to an Aqua convention. And he did his thing he did his presentation on the greatness of Saturn. It had maybe about a year it had been out. Honey, that was the most uncomfortable, difficult to listen to. It was one of the worst experiences of the entire, it was just horrible. It was packed and it was in this really small room. Everybody was really uncomfortable. Everybody was, and no one could stay awake. It was boring as fuck. It was just, and I remember we all walked out dead like zombies. We were just like, ooh, we totally felt the greatness of Saturn. That's why I say don't work with him. He's a downer. He's a downer. It's not because, right? It's not because he's not efficient or effective or useful or whatever. It's because he's no fucking fun. And I mean, we all thought we were going to get in there and learn some stuff. I mean, he's the opposite of enthusiasm. All of our enthusiasm, practically all of our life energy was sucked out of during that entire class. He thoroughly raised Saturn for that class. That man is powerful as hell. He thoroughly invoked that planet. And so you don't want to experience that. We did that. We went into it voluntarily, thinking, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to learn so much about Saturn. We learned so much, but we didn't hear anything. We didn't take in any information. I don't remember a motherfucking thing he said. Right. We're all working on it unconsciously, aren't we? Right. So the last thing we need is him, in my opinion. Just like I done a reading for this friend I told you about who's become the new Earth Master in the Royal Road thing. Her name is Marlene. And Marlene wanted to work on her 12th house because she's got an assembly. She's got an assembly in the 12th house with the ruler of the ninth, Mercury, and Venus is there and Sun is there. Anyway, but so she wanted, after she had a reading, she thought, oh, I want to work on my 12th house. And I said, no, 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 no. Just like with Saturn, you don't want to work on the 12th. You want to work on the planet in the 12th instead. So kind of the same thing. It's like, I want to get my 12th, work on my 12th house. No, 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 you don't. Because the 12th house is no fun. You're going to feel isolated. And remember, it's the joy of Saturn. It's going to feel like him. Right, so same kind of thing. All right, so Saturn is the black. That's a fun digression, huh? Harsh, right? So he's got the harsh, acidic flavor. Jupiter is the ashen or green, ashen meaning kind of like gray. And he's got the sweet. And so it's interesting, you'd think maybe Venus has the sweet, but she doesn't. Mars, the red. Mars has red and the bitter. Sun has the transparent, right? Because the sun is the all-seeing eye, nothing can be hidden, and yellow and gold, sharp flavors. So the spicy goes under the sun. I always thought it would be Mars because I consider Mars as being more about heat, but Mars is more with the bitter. And of course, as a malefic, sharp, spicy foods can still be quite delicious, but bitter foods are not always that enjoyable, right? Mars is not enjoyable. Acidic, harsh foods, acidic flavors, like Saturn and the Mars flavors should not be necessarily enjoyable. As a matter of fact, when they talked about the suffumigations, they talked about the noxious smells that are bad. And like the Mars suffumigation, I think they use a black cat. They use like an owl or a black cat or something in the stuff that you burn. You all mix it all together, mix it together with different scents and burn the shit. And if you want, I'll look for that and we can find that. Sun, we just talked about that. Venus has the white and the unctuous or greasy or the fatty. And the example that I used for that was, my favorite version of it is the confit de canard or the duck confit. But the American favorite version is pizza or macaroni and cheese. Mac and cheese is really, I think that really kind of sums up American unctuousness. There might be other things. Here in Mexico, it might be quesadilla or quesadilla or enchiladas con Suiza might be something like that here. Oh, carnitas. Yes, excellent. Yes, that would fit right in. That would fit right in, absolutely. Thank you. Carnitas. And birria and birria and what's the other one? I can't remember. Barbacoa. Birria and barbacoa too would kind of fit into that. Then the houses have colors. So once again, so let's say I've got a 9th house issue, or I've got a 2nd house issue. Most people have 2nd house issues, right? Notice that green is the color that goes with the 2nd. It also goes with the 12th. And what you're going to notice here is that this kind of straddles, these are all things straddling the horizon. So the 1st and 7 are white, then 2 and 12 are green, right? They straddle the ascendant. Then 3rd and 11, now we're fanning away from the ascendant. 3rd and 11 is orange. We're continuing to fan away from the ascendant with 4 and 10. Now we're at exactly 90 degrees away. And then from the 5 and 9 fans away again. And then 6 and 8 surrounds the descendant, right? And that's the black. And remember that the descendant used to be considered the point of death Hellenistically. And more likely, this might go back that far. This might go back maybe as far as that when you have the 6 and 8 representing black. And of course, 8th house represents death anyway, and you wear black in mourning. So those are kind of so I've done quite a few classes as of right now, maybe four classes at this point. And one of the things that we did, and I don't know if you're interested in doing it, but one of the things that we did was we did a class. I did a class with Marlene where we looked at some numerology aspects, and then we combined the numerology with the astrology, and it was really interesting. We had 2 people who knew their chart very well, and I was able to get quite specific around that. So if you're interested in doing that, we can play with that after this. And then now we are going to go a little bit woo-woo. We're going to get a little woo-woo because this actually comes from Jyotish and from yoga. But when nowadays, when we think about chakras, we think about the new age. We think of crystals and chakras and all that, but the chakra system is really super important. It's really what's housing our life force, and it's also what differentiates our life force through different, through each prism, through a prism of the way that the chakra itself expresses. So as a result, so for instance, but the chakras also can be corresponded to an element, and this makes it even more interesting, a planet, and then also to a sense. So because the senses have what they call tattvas, and those tattvas connect to these chakra. So for instance, the way that I brought it up on Thursday was I said, hey, those of you who say, I don't have any of this element in my chart. Now, that's a very anthropocentric kind of modern way of looking at the chart, right? I have no earth in my chart. Well, what you can do is you can go to the earth chakra. You can basically start working on your own chakra. And let me actually add the colors that go with the chakras, because I was in a class where everybody knew the colors because it was with Marlene, who's been working with that. So as you can see, the first chakra, which is at the base of the spine, is the earth element, and Mercury and the ascendant are there, and so is the sense of smell. Now, one of the things I also said to them was, now think about this thing with COVID right now. With COVID right now, what's happening with people when they get it? They're losing their sense of smell and their sense of taste. The two chakras, the Muladhara and the Svadhisthana, the first and the second, are the bottom two chakras. They're what roots you and connects you, right? So you're rooted to the earth through the Muladhara, and you're connected to yourself and others through the Svadhisthana. And so I thought that was really interesting, because those are the two basic areas. Those are the two most base areas for connection to life, for connection to physical life. And those are the first things that get affected, and in some cases never get put back, don't get restored. So already we can see that what we could tell a person, or if I were, which I am, if I were a Reiki healer and somebody came to me and said, hey, I had COVID and I still haven't gotten my smell and taste back, I'd go right to those chakras and start working. All right, so like a royal blue. And same thing if you've got a person who's got an eating disorder. An eating disorder deals with the sense of taste, even though we know it corresponds with other things as well, but it's happening through the mouth and through the sense of taste. That also then means that you could work with that person's second chakra to get things working better. Right, so there's an issue of connectivity to their physical body, right? There's a problem with that, but there's really a problem with the way that they're showing the self-hate through their body is through the sense of their taste. And so that could be a possibility for how to do it. And it's ruled by the appetitive planets, absolutely. Very, very good. And yes, then so not only do they rule them, they're considered to inhabit the chakra. So if you've got a problem, if you've got nothing in your earth area, if you've got no earth signs in your chart, you can work with Mercury and your ascendant, because the ascendant obviously is the body, the most formed thing. And then Mercury, remember, he's the ruler of earthly things. Same thing, if you have no water, you would work with the moon and Venus. They're the cold, wet planets. They're the water planets. The sun and the Mars are the hot and dry planets. They're the fire planets. So same thing, you have no fire in your chart. And we had a guy, he had no fire in his chart. And one of the problems he had was being able to assert himself. And notice also that sight is an issue. And so quite a few of the people that came up asked me about developing their psychic ability. And of course, we know that the sun represents that. The sun in the ninth house would represent that prophecy and divination and that kind of thing. And notice how the sun rules sight. And of course, the sun represents the right eye in a man and the left eye in a woman. Right? So, and look at also how the yellow of the sun is also the yellow of the third chakra. So you could work with, so if you're interested, you know, if, like I said, we get into more of the woo-woo kind of meditation-y type, but it's not woo-woo and yoga type stuff. But if you want to understand kind of how to work with your chakra or chakras in order to kind of, because also remember, the chakras have the quantum total of your energy, of your life energy, and the clearer that your chakras work, the better that you work as well. The clearer that your chakras work, the better that you're able to work in the world. And so that's the most important thing to kind of understand. And the whole way, this whole thing about a Kundalini rising and all of that stuff, the Kundalini rises from the Muladhara chakra up to the Sahasrara, up to the very top. That's what the whole Kundalini chakra thing is, a rising thing is about the Kundalini going through the chakras. It's this pathway, it's this life, vital life pathway. Earth has Saturn and Rahu, right? Because we know Saturn rules Libra, rules Aquarius and is exalted in Libra. Rahu is considered to rule Aquarius in Jyotish. So North Node and Saturn are air. And then ether is the fifth element. So space is the fifth element, and Jupiter and, it's Ketu, sorry, Jupiter and Ketu are the ones for that. And the royal blue. So here are the colors for the as well. So the red, the orange, the yellow, the green, the royal blue, the indigo blue or deep purple, and the violet. And then the other example I wanted to give you is, think if we had, if you're a healer and you're dealing with a person who has a sex addiction, that's dealing with the sense of touch. And notice that it's in the heart chakra, that basically a sex addiction is ultimately an absence of the heart, which I think is really fascinating. Promiscuity and sex addiction can be dehumanizing. And so it can be, I mean, I'm not anti-recreational sex, but certainly as a gay man, I've noticed when recreational sex moves into what I call fully antisocial and anti-human, and that is definitely an absence of heart chakra in it. And so you'll notice that the 5 elements are basically considered the first 5 chakras, and then the third eye chakra, which is the 6th chakra, and then the chakra at the crown of the head. Oh, I should be telling you where they are. So Muladhara is the bottom. Svadhisthana is the second, so behind the navel. It's called the navel chakra. The solar plexus, just above the navel, is the 3rd chakra, or the Manipura. The Anahata, or the 4th chakra, is the heart chakra. The 5th chakra is the Vishuddhi, and then the 3rd eye is the Agni, other 6, and the crown, so the crown of the head, so going all the way towards the back of the head and the top, that's the 7th, or Sahasrara. So the chakras have been minimized and turned into kind of a laughingstock, but they are really important. And and generally, if you've got problems in the love area or expressing love, then it's a Moon and Venus issue. Right? If you've got problems asserting yourself, then you've got a fire element issue. And you can work with the Sun and Mars. So you don't have to necessarily work with the chakra if you don't want to, but you can work with the planets who are there in it. So here's a list of remedial actions that you can do. And what I thought I would do after is kind of go into each of you and kind of create like a little remedial plan, because that's essentially what the Jyotishis will do. And that's what Pandit Katiji has been doing with his work on the Atmakataka and the Ishta Devata. So first of all, this idea of creating an altar for the planet that you're working on, or even just, setting up some kind of altar. And so once again, you could use their color, you could use their number, you can use candles to represent their color, you can use cloth to represent their color, you can use the number that goes with it. So let's say we were talking about Mercury, the number is 8, the color is mixed, right? So Mercury has the mixed colors. Let's go back here for just one second. Yeah, so we know that Mercury day is Wednesday. We know that absolutely know that the sunrise on Mercury day is going to be a Mercury hour. We know that Mercury's planetary number is 8. And we know that his color is mixed. So he represents the mixed and the mixed flavors as well. So we could have mixed colored things. We could have mixed colored cloth. We could have more than one candle of more than one color, or we could have a candle that has more than one color. You know, they'll have those candles in the glass that have many colors in them. And so that would be a way that we could create our mixed thing. Then we also know that planets rule certain things. So Mercury rules books. He rules accounting books. He rules books of any kind. We could put a book on the thing. So when we're talking about kind of coming to some idea around looking at a remedial action, then we could create an altar that would bring up all of the significations of the planets. We can create a talisman, and here's the place to talk a little bit about electional astrology. So in the Renaissance period, it became quite common to start incorporating ceremonial magic. There's kind of a renaissance in magical practices and in esoteric groups and secret societies and wisdom traditions, trying to bring back wisdom traditions. And so one of the things that was done, and if you read Cornelius Agrippa, who I mentioned in the first page, and his 3 books on occult, he wrote 3 books on occult philosophy. And in them, in the 3rd book, there is a full treatise on all of the planets and on how to create a talisman for those planets. And so he'll say, for instance, so if you want to do something for Jupiter, when Jupiter is exalted or in his own sign and he's in the ascendant, during a Jupiter day and a Jupiter hour, you may draw this thing on tin, which is Jupiter's metal, and create this talisman for him. Or there are also these things called planetary squares or magical squares, and they all represent these squares that are of the number of the planets. So for instance, the Saturn square will have 3 across, 3 and 3 down. The Venus square will have 8 across, 7 rows across, and 7 down. The Mercury one will have 8 across and 8 down. So it's basically kind of creating a numerical pattern which brings up the vibration of the planet. So those are simple talismans, right? So a simple talisman is something like this. Something like a planetary square. You can get into the more difficult talismans where you've got the Solomonic talismans that he created or that are attributed to him, and then and things that you find in things like the Goetia, so that you would find in what are called grimoires, which are basically they're magical treatises. They're treatises on magic of the medieval and the Renaissance period, and many of those have talismans, and almost all of those, magic and astrology, are deeply, deeply wed. In any case of making a talisman, you are always, at the very least, you're looking at where the moon is, right? So always magic is always dealing with the position of the moon. And certainly when you're really getting into the art of looking at a talisman or working with a talisman, then you're looking at creating an election. So let's take, for example, Jupiter right now, because Jupiter is in the beginning of his own sign. He's in the first decan. Now we know that the first decan of Jupiter, of Pisces rather, is ruled by Venus. She has her term. That's her term. She rules the first 12 degrees of Pisces by term. So, but Jupiter owns that sign. So we could, on Thursdays, we could look for, as a matter of fact, what you might want to do is look for the next few Thursdays. Now, of course, the problem is right now that the sun is in Capricorn. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to wait until the sun is at like late degrees of Aquarius or in Pisces. Of course, if he's in Pisces, you're going to want to wait until he's left the degrees of Jupiter, right? Because he's going to be combusting the Jupiter and making it weak. So let's say we want to make a Jupiter talisman. To be honest, it's not a bad time to do so. What we want to do is we would want to maybe wait until a Thursday, Oh, looks like somebody astrology said the 27th is a good day. Oh, let's look at that. 27th of this month. Let's look at that. Then let's look at that one. Hold on a second. 27th of this month. So this is perfect. This will give us an idea of why he said it's good. Did they say what time, Layla? (8:25 a.m. in Denver). Let's see. That's mountain time. That's mountain time, right? So that means that we should come back 2 hours for me. So 10, what'd you say? 8:20, let's see. 8:25. So it should be 10:25 a.m. Okay. Oh, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just rectify it so that to the hour. Okay. I'm just going to rectify to now. What does that chart look like? Does it have Jupiter on the ascendant? Are you looking at it? Exactly. Yes. Beautiful. All right. So then I'll just do that. I'll just put Jupiter on the ascendant here. Hold on. And we're going back. And rectify further up. That's close enough. Is that about right? Okay. All right. So, oh yeah, this is okay. This is the election. This is the election. He's right. 27th of this month. So what I would do, because, okay, so these are the things that we'd be looking for. These are the rules when we're trying to do an astrological talisman. We want the planet to usually be in the first house or the 10th house. Now, it's better if it's in the first house and ruling the first house, right? Because then it's the entire reason for the chart, right? And remember also when we looked at the 7 advantageous places, and when we look at the scores that go for each house, we know that the first house is considered the most powerful house of all of them, right? It advances everything the most. And the 10th house is next. So that's obviously why it can be first house or 10th house. This is a fantastic election. Look at this exalted Mars on the part of fortune too. And the Venus there too. Ooh, Venus in the 11th. This is a great fucking election. All right. The moon and Jupiter sign. It's by square. It'd be nicer. You know, I'd like it better, to be honest. It would be even better if the moon were here in Taurus. I would like that even better. I wouldn't like it if the sextile from here, and I wouldn't like the sextile from Capricorn because that's Jupiter's fall, and I wouldn't like the trine from Scorpio because that's the moon's fall. But I would like that, and I do like this. If it's going to have to be in Jupiter's sign, you're right. Remember, Jupiter only owns signs that square each other. So if it's got to be a square, if it's got to be a square, this is the best kind, right? Because knowing about reception in the way that we do, right? Knowing about reception, we know that the moon is pushing nature. Oh, and too bad Layla Akbar isn't here, because I finally found Bonatti's whole thing about the difference between giving one's nature and I forget. There was something that we saw in the Bonatti 146, and we couldn't understand the difference. It had to do with reception, whether a nature was being distributed or being pushed or something like that. But I'll come back to when she's here next week. We'll look at that. But in this particular case, we have pushing nature and pushing power, right? Because the Jupiter is in his own sign, so he's going to receive everybody. But then the moon is in Jupiter's sign, so she's pushing nature, her nature and his at Jupiter. This is a fantastic thing, a really great. And look at how Jupiter rules the 1st and the 10th. So this is exactly what you'd want to do. You'd want to either put the planet that you're trying to not so much propitiate, but to exalt or to work with, you'd put them on the ascendant, You put them on the 10th house, and you try to make the moon applying to that planet. So that's the most important thing, is that you want the moon, if you can, of course, if that's where things get more difficult, is trying to get, first of all, one, and notice like what we have here. I wonder if this is during a Jupiter hour. Let's see, because it might be like the very, very end of the Jupiter hour. It's the hour of Mars. Ah, see, so it's the hour of Mars. I wonder if I could have moved further back, because Jupiter is the planet before Mars. So I wonder if 725 is what I should be using. Hold on. Because we want to be in the Jupiter hour too, but that might take us a little bit too far back. See, it takes us too far back. So, and I wonder what that puts me. Are we in Jupiter hour? We're still in the hour of Mars. So, hey, Layla, what hour is it in that other chart, in that Denver chart 825?
Oh, the planetary hour?
Yeah, because that's what you'd want. You'd want both if you can. Now, this is a great election without that being the case. But if you can, you want it to be. So let's see now if we can.
It looks like it's a Mars hour.
It's a Mars hour. It's a Mars hour.
So if you pulled it back 1 hour, what happened that you didn't like?
Oh, what happened that I didn't like? Oh, I'm sorry, you might not be able to see it. When I pulled it back 1 hour, the ascendant is Aquarius. We're back to 7:30. The ascendant is Aquarius. I'm trying to see where the Jupiter hour will start. So I just took it back. I think I had it at exactly 8 o'clock. I just took it back to 7:30. And that took us into a 25 degree Aquarius ascendant, which we don't want. So this is not able to give us the Jupiter hour, but it's able to give us the Jupiter day and Jupiter in the ascendant, which is one of the reasons I was saying we might want to wait until the sun is at late degrees of Aquarius. Do you see what I'm saying? Because that means late degrees of Aquarius will rise with the sun at the beginning of the Jupiter hour. Pretend that the sun were here, right? So if the sun were here at 25 degrees of Aquarius, then there's an hour for that sign to start moving. From the minute of the Jupiter hour, it will start moving. So let's say we were to wait until, let's say we were to go to, let's see, this is the 27th. So 27, the 3rd, the 10th. And then that would probably be our Jupiter hour. This is what I'm talking about. Nope, not yet. Let me share this. Okay, so here we are. It is what day is it? It's a Jupiter day. We still have a Mars hour. Now I'm going to start rectifying this ascendant backwards. Let's do it by time. Let's do it by 10 minutes. Okay, we've still got 10 minutes. Okay, good. Okay, 7:10, 7 o'clock. Okay, now we're at 2 degrees. Let's see. Bam, here we are. But look, the problem is that now the moon is not applying to the Jupiter. So we're in a Jupiter hour. We've got Jupiter in the ascendant, but now the moon has separated from the Jupiter. And not only has the moon separated from the Jupiter, but the moon is in the sign of Jupiter's detriment. This is how it gets tricky. So this is how things start to get tricky. And also the moon's next aspect is to Saturn. So this wouldn't be a really good election. Every now and then we're able to get that perfect election where it's exactly what we want it to be. Let's go another week and see. Okay, so now, oh, now we've got it by opposition. So of course we don't really want that, do we? We've got it applying. We've most certainly got it applying, but now it's applying by opposition. So yes, indeed, it looks like the 27th of January is the correct one.
Garth, so there's more than one planetary hour in a day. In theory, could you just go for the next planetary hour?
Yes, you could, except that Jupiter might not be well placed.
Got it.
That's the important aspect of it. Because remember, what they're saying is they want the Jupiter to be in the ascendant or the 10th house. He's only going to be in the ascendant or the 10th house twice a day. Right? So they want him to be here. Right? Look, he's right on the cusp. He's aspecting the midheaven. The moon is applying. So really, and remember, they might take it when he's in the 11th, but think about it this way. Think about how much a planet can broadcast itself depending on the houses. A planet can broadcast its influence the most strongly in the first house. When it's in the 10th, it's almost as strong. When it's in the 7th, it's not quite so strong. When it's in the 11th, it's even less strong. When it's in the 4th, it's even less strong. Right? So it's still strongest. Those are still the strongest houses, but it's by gradation, right? It's just, so we don't want it in the 4th. And also, what do we know about the 4th? It's the subterranean. You can't see it. It's midnight. It's the dark. It's below the horizon. We don't want them there. Jupiter in the 7th is going to be in the sign. Jupiter as ruler of the 7th is going to advantage the other, not us. Right? So we make a Jupiter talisman when he's in the 11th, when he's in the 7th, and that's not really good for him. That's not really useful or not really good for you, right? Because what you're doing is you're giving the other person the advantage. So the first house is you, your body. The 10th house is how you are known, the works by which you are known. That's why you want those in those two houses. Perfect. So that's an excellent kind of perfect kind of segue of going into this type of thing. Do you avoid it? Yes, I would avoid an opposition. Remember, if a planet, if a planet is opposing a planet, it's in its detriment. It's opposing it from its detriment, right? The moon, when we saw that the moon was opposing Jupiter, the moon was in Virgo, which is the detriment of Jupiter. So she's giving him detriment. We don't want that, right? That's why I said we don't want the trine from Scorpio, because we didn't want, right? Jupiter is in Pisces, so we didn't want the trine from Scorpio because that's the fall of the moon. We didn't want the sextile from Capricorn because that's the fall of Jupiter. And we're fine with the square, and that's why we're fine with the square from Sagittarius, because Jupiter rules it. And we'd be happy with the sextile from Taurus because moon would be exalted. And we'd be really happy with the trine from Cancer because that's the exaltation of Jupiter. So we want to take these things into account. So this whole issue with reception really matters. Now, of course, if the best election happens, right, we just saw that, oh, hey, I don't like that election. I got picky, right? I don't like that election because it's not a Jupiter hour. Let's find one that's really a Jupiter hour and a Jupiter day. And we did, and it was garbage, right? The one where it was Jupiter hour and Jupiter day, the first one, the moon was in Gemini, which was the detriment of Jupiter, and she had already passed the exact aspect. She was separating. Then the other one, she was applying, but by opposition. No, we'll stick with the other one. So elections to create talismans and planetary squares. And certainly, like I say, the planetary squares are among the easiest to kind of start with. And so on the 27th, you might want to do that. Now, the whole thing, Christopher Warnock has been making these talismans based on all kinds of metals. He's been using the metals, and he's selling them for hundreds of dollars. And then also, if you study with him and you create, he takes like a little bit of that money as well. Like he takes a cut of whatever you kind of make based on that stuff too. But it's easy to make talismans out of the planetary with planetary squares. It's easy that you can do the talismans that are made on paper or parchment are not quite as durable as if they're etched into metals, but they definitely work. And I went through a whole, actually, I don't know if you know this, but I have a planetary talisman as a tattoo on my body. And Christopher Warnock actually helped me to create the election for it, because at the time he had a Yahoo group where he basically did that. He had a Yahoo group of people that would come in, and they would do an election, and then he would tweak the election for you. And so I came in with an election to get this tattoo, and then he said, "Hey, why don't you do this instead?" So Christopher Warnock actually created the election for this particular tattoo. But one of the, so that's just one of those interesting things, the interesting little tidbits that I wanted to give. So we see how astrology can be used in a way that has nothing to do necessarily with what we think about astrology, right? This is magic. We're now in the realm of magic. We've now left the realm of astrology and delineation and measurements and whatever. And now we're purely in the the realm of correspondences for magical workings. Okay, so the other thing, like I said, if you read tarot, you can, like I said, you can create, or maybe I will start to create a tarot spread that will be about revealing karmic obligations of each planet, as we talked about. And then another thing you can do is something called planetary charity. So if you've got a planet, and this is specifically for planets that are debilitated. So talismans should not be used if you've got a planet, like for instance, in my case, my Jupiter is in Gemini. Talismans should not necessarily be used for planets in detriment or fall, because they can be used for peregrine, but not for detriment or fall, because ultimately, once again, this thing of similarities, this law of similarities and correspondences, Jupiter will be Jupiter, and Jupiter will then start affecting your Jupiter, who will he won't actually act better. He'll just start acting like he is in your chart, right? So if you've got Jupiter in Capricorn retrograde, and you decide to do a Jupiter talisman, you're going to make Jupiter powerful, and then he's going to say, "Oh, here, let me bless your chart with Jupiter," and your Jupiter is going to act a lot like Jupiter in Capricorn. He's not going to act like Jupiter in Cancer. If you have what you need to do, so a talisman is something that you use to exalt or improve, but a planetary charity is something that you use to propitiate. And to propitiate is when you say, "Oh, please help me, please be nicer, please be nicer." Right? You're to propitiate the deity, you do planetary charity. And for planetary charity, what you would do is, let's say you have this Jupiter in Cancer or Capricorn. You've got this Jupiter in Capricorn. Actually, let's use something different. Let's use Mars in Cancer. You've got this Mars in Cancer. On Tuesday, during a Mars hour, what you could do is you could go to the VA hospital, or you could even go to a homeless shelter or to a homeless encampment and ask, "Is there a veteran? Are there any veterans here?" And you could give $5, because 5 is the number of Mars. You could give $5 to 5 veterans, or you could give $25 to 1 veteran. And thus you would be doing your planetary charity to Mars. So and same thing with Mercury. So for the past 8 weeks, which the number is 8 for Mercury, I have Mercury in Sagittarius. I have been doing a planetary charity. I've been either walking to the mercado. Mercado is market, and Mercury rules markets. I have been walking up to the mercado, and unfortunately, there are quite a few young people, kids, that are working at some of these market stalls. And so I've specifically pinpointed people between 4 and 14, right? Because that's the age of man that is represented by Mercury. And I have basically given 64 pesos to anybody within that age range who is working at one of those mercado stalls and who is under 14. And then also across from me, there's a place called Parque de las Palapas, and Parque de las Palapas has has like a food court, and there is a 12-year-old working at one of the stores or one of the restaurants, and that's one of the better restaurants that has some of the better food. And so sometimes I go there and I give it to him instead. So that's how you would do your planetary charity if you have an issue. Now, if you're using a talisman, you're going to also, if you're using a talisman or you're doing a planetary charity, or if you're making an altar, or you're going to do a meditation, or whatever it is that I'm going to, that we're going to talk about, or whatever it is that you find yourself open to, then you're going to need to use the Orphic hymns. And the Orphic hymns are basically of whatever planet. They're basically Hellenistic hymns that were used to invoke the planets. And so what you would do with any of these remedial actions that we're talking about, because they all come from some area, they all come on some level from some area of ritual magic, right? And using ritual magic as invocation. We're no longer in the quasi or quasi-scientific or the semi-scientific world of astrology alone. We are now in the realm of ceremonial magic. And so what you would do is you would light your candle, you would find, and we're going to look at maybe if we can find scents that go with this as well. What's going on? Oh, am I not in presentation? Sorry about that. There, can you see it now? All right, so sorry about that. I thought I had already, I forget that you have to kind of share everything each time. Let's see. Okay, beautiful. So remedial, so we're talking about how to go about starting each remedial action. So you should be creating an altar, period. So you should be creating a planetary altar or a zodiacal altar or an astrology altar for yourself generally. And when you would go to that altar to do workings or to do any kind of ritual or to go into meditation around the planet or whatever it is, then you would light a candle in the color of the planet. You would have something that represents the number. You would have the stones. Remember, there are stones and minerals that are represented. So crystals even, oh, crystals, oh shit, right? But there's even crystals that we can use. So we can even go into that for each planet. And then there are also, as you can see down here, there are forms of the planet that you can use. And we'll go into that in a second. So the candles would be lit. You would have the color represented on the altar, either with the candle and preferably with some kind of cloth of the color. You would have something in whatever amount that the planet is talking about. So for instance, last week when we were looking at Venus and we knew that peaches, you could have 7 peaches on that, right? So she rules peaches and the number 7. So you could have 7 peaches on her altar. And you would burn something sweet smelling, something that smells really good because she likes things that smells good. I guess we're going for Venus right now. And you could use the white, or you could use anything that's beautiful. Anything that's lovely and beautiful. A piece of jewelry, right? She loves ornaments. So you could do that. You could have 7 pieces of jewelry. You could have 7 peaches. You would have something that smells good. You could put macaroni and cheese on there, something that's unctuous. Although that was a joke, but you could do that. And then you would start your Orphic hymn, right? So you would start your Orphic hymn, you would do that. And so then you would do whatever your working is. So if you're doing tarot, you would do your tarot working. If you're doing the planetary charity, then you would leave, you leave, put out the candle and everything, you would leave and go do your charity. If you're making a talisman, then you would start making your talisman after you do the hymn. If you are doing meditation, if you're doing meditation, then now we will go into altar work and meditation, altar building and meditation, which we just talked about the altar building. But this is what you could do. I had one person yesterday, on Thursday, who wanted to work with, she wanted to basically refine her praxis in her business. And praxis, of course, is a word that represents action, but it kind of represents kind of directionally correct action. And but it was specifically in her business. So I asked her, well, do you know what the sign on your midheaven is? And she said, yes, I do. And I said, well, what is it? It was Capricorn. Of course, I said, well, we don't want to work with Saturn. Where is Mars? And Mars happened to be in Scorpio. Mars was in Scorpio in his own sign. And Mars is action, and action is praxis, right? So it was already about praxis. So this is what I told her. I said, what you're going to do is you're going to put a red cloth on your altar, and then you're going to put a red candle there. Here we get the Mars forms. And then what I want you to do is see if you've got a son or a daughter for that matter, maybe you bought toy soldiers for them. Remember when there were those little tiny toy soldiers that you could create battlefields? And you're going to create a battlefield on the altar. And you can also put, as you can see, a he-goat, a horse, a stag. So you can put a stag, you can put five toy horses, 5 stags, a red garment, obviously, wool, cheese lip. You see all these things that are connected with it. An armed man. There we are, an armed man, a king riding on a wolf. I think that's fascinating. But this armed man. So what I said was, you know what? Create their milieu on your altar. And then go into meditation and go onto the battlefield. So create the battlefield, then go into meditation and onto the battlefield and go talk to Mars. And here's one of the things that I realized we want to ask when we talk to our planets. When we talk to our planets, one of the things that I was talking about a lot when we were doing the traditional astrology course was that karma. And that there were 3 types of karma. That the 3 types of karma that they talk about in Jyotish and in Hinduism and in yoga is there's karma that can be changed, there is karma that cannot be changed, and there is karma, some of which can be changed and some of which cannot. Since each planet can be seen as a separate stream of karmic activity based on its specific significations, based on the house that it occupies, and based on the houses that it rules, and based on the condition, it's conditioned by, essential dignity, and based on the aspect. So based on its, what do we call that? Local determination. So we can see that each planet, based on its local determination, provides a stream of karmic conditions and obligations. Thus, if we do decide to go into meditation with our planets, the very first thing that we want to ask them is my karma with you changeable, fixed, or mutable? Now, of course, we can look at the sign that it's in and make some kind of, if you've got something in a fixed sign, that more than likely, that was basically how Sanjay Rath would basically tell you that was the case. That, okay, if you've got something where it's an immovable sign, like what we call the cardinal signs, then that's karma that can be changed. If you've got a planet that's in a fixed sign, that's karma that can't be changed. If you've got karma that's in a mutable sign, some of it can be changed, some of it can't. But Western feels a little bit different. And the reason I think it feels different is that I feel like when we see a planet that is in detriment and retrograde, that, in my opinion, is a version of karma that can't be changed. I think that when we're looking at traditional Western, I think we have to take the condition of the planet more into account. Because also think, Mars rules Scorpio, Saturn rules Aquarius, the Sun rules Leo, Venus rules Taurus. Does that mean that that certainly means that they're powerful planets? Does that mean that they can't change the karma that's connected with them? They should be powerful enough to do almost anything. So that's why I'm having you do that. If you do decide to go into any of this more woo-woo shit and do a meditation or do tarot, then part of the question is going to be, which kind of karma are you bringing me? Which kind of karma do you bring? And as a result, do I bear? And then, how do I best deal with it, right? Because as Pandit Katiji says, am I dealing with it with a smile, or am I dealing with it with a frown? And as a result, as well, then we can go into constant conversation with the planet, right? So that the planet can become like a master. But remember, once again, it's really important, since you all are into astrology, it's really important that you fully understand the local determination of that planet. What house is it in? What houses does it rule? Especially because that's where it's going to be, that's where you're going to feel it the most. That's where you're going to feel that Jupiter and Gemini, and that's Gemini retrograde the most, right? If he's ruling the seventh house, or he's in the seventh house, is the marriage going to be easy to happen? Probably not. So is that karma something that I can change or not? So that's, and what is it? Gemini is a mutable sign. So we're not even talking about a fixed sign. So that's kind of my point. Can this stuff be changed, or can it not? Guess what my question now is now? What's your question now? Oh, is that your question? Oh, are you saying that, oh, which house system should I use?
I always ask, yeah, with planetary magic.
Oh, good question. You know what? I don't care. I don't care.
Shift. Like in theory, I could do a sun talisman if I'm using whole sign because it's in 1, but it's in the 12th house.
I don't care. You do what you like. As a matter of fact, on some level, it might make sense to use it. You know what? To be honest, I don't care. You do what you want. And as a matter of fact, you know what? I would ask him, or whoever you go in to talk to. I would say, which houses do you actually rule? Which houses are you really representing? Because obviously, I'm always saying use both. Use both. Try one and then try the other. Try one and then try the other. I don't have any because now once again, we're no longer in the realm of science. We're no longer in the realm of natural science. That's the term I'm looking for, not pseudoscience, but natural science. We're now in the realm of magic. So we're now in the realm, and now we can use the moon as my intuition. So we can use the moon as my intuitive, what I sniff out and what I intuitively kind of roll myself towards, right? So I say whatever you decide, but I would say try both anyway. You know me. So considering that, let's go ahead and start with you. What area of your chart would you like to work on?
With my chart?
Yeah.
Okay, so given what you said about not effing around with planets that are in bad condition, because a lot of mine are.
Well,
I think
but
actually
you can. But you can.
Well, I thought that was what the charity was for.
Yeah, you can do charity. You can do charity instead. So I would say
I'm not out of options. Yeah. I just, if I were trying to elect something, if you can accept a retrograde planet, I have Jupiter in Cancer. That could work. Otherwise, yes. Okay.
Yes. So what I would do in your case is I would use that election for the 27th. I would find the Cornelius Agrippa the three books on occult philosophy, and especially book 3 will have the pictures, will have the images that you should use.
Got it.
I'm going to come off of share, and they'll have the images that you should use. Often he might prefer it when it's in Cancer. Like he'll sometimes have one that's specifically for when it's in Cancer, that's specifically for when it's in Jupiter or Sagittarius. So check that. So check that one and create one. And also what I would suggest, if you have access to real parchment, I hope we don't have any vegans here. If you have access to real parchment, use real parchment. And even if you can find a quill, because then you're working with real elements. Otherwise, just find, nice parchment paper and colored pencils and create a beautiful, pretty thing. But now, here's the thing. So what did we say? You're going to start by burning the candle in the color. You're going to have some kind of color as well. And I think Jupiter was what color was Jupiter did we come up with? Did anybody write it down? You're going to work with Jupiter, right? So it's Thursday.
Cool. Yeah, because you don't want me to work with Saturn.
No, well, I would rather.
It's the most dignified planet in my chart, but yeah, I'll work with Jupiter.
Yeah, so you don't really need to, right? So he's going to work. He'll do his thing, and he'll do his thing. He's fine. So you're going to work with Jupiter, hopefully at daylight, at sunrise. His number is 4. His color is green or gray, or you can mix those two together, kind of like a grayish green. And let's see, what house is he in?
Again, it depends, but I'm gonna go with Placidus because it works out better for me. 5th house.
He's in the 5th by what sign is rising? Is Aquarius is rising?
No, yeah.
Okay, so so he's in the 5th. So then you could use the honey color. So you could find a honey colored candle, and you could use a green candle for Jupiter in the 5th.
Got it. Okay, honey.
Okay.
Thanks.
Now, what I would do, however, is I would do two ceremonies. I would do a follow-up ceremony the week after with Jupiter in the 6th. But instead of black, I would use white. So never use black. So I would use the white light because we want to purify whatever is the problem. So I would do, so the initial ceremony should be where you create the talisman at the sunrise on Jupiter on the Thursday, the 27th, on the sunrise. You'll do the Orphic hymn, you'll light the candles, do the Orphic hymn, have 4 of whatever on the altar with you, and then you can even have it in a tray. If you can't find a place for an altar, buy a big tray, and that you can put a candle on. You can put cloth on the tray. Then you can put the candle on the tray, and you can put all the other items. And now remember, Jupiter also represents the law, and he represents clergy. So you can create a courthouse. You can create a judge's, you can put a gavel on there. And then you can also, now his Jupiter forms are a peacock or stag or a bull, an azure garment, so a blue garment, they say, a sword. So if you've got a little small sword, you can put that there. But a bull or a stag.
Swords to Jupiter?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Instead of so Mars didn't get the sword. Mars got the stag, horse. It got the armed man. But because the sword has, remember, think about King Arthur and the sword, that sword was magical and had magic power. And only one person could pull the sword. The sword's not just, in this case, the sword's not just a weapon. The sword in this case is acting as a conduit of power. Think of it that way.
And is that what a Jupiter talisman would do? Like in general, say it like worked out the way you wanted it to? Like
wealth.
What would the effects be?
Wealth. Because remember, Jupiter is
Wealth.
the significator for wealth, increase.
I'm looking for jobs right now.
Perfecto. So don't miss that date, and try to get up at least a half hour before the sunrise to do this. Get yourself.
Garth, I think that the chart works out the same way, where that does it matter? I want to get a Pisces ascendant, right? So I might have to wait until a Mars hour.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You're going to have to do it. So you're in Madrid, right? So you're not going to be able to do the So I don't, so yeah, so you'll have to figure out for yourself when that actual Jupiter is on the ascendant. It may be a completely different hour. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like 10 a.m., which works out well for me because I don't want to get up at the crack of dawn.
What's the hour? What's the, so what
It's a
hour is it?
Mars hour as well. It's a
It
Mars
is a
hour as
Mars hour.
well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
tried to get it so it wasn't, but then it moved the ascendant, which I think is not
Right.
worth. It's not a worthy
Exa-
trade-off.
exactly. Exactly. If there's anybody else here that's doing Jupiter, that's working with Jupiter, you should be taking notes on what I'm telling her now. So anybody else who wants to work with Jupiter, that means you don't have Jupiter in Virgo, Gemini, or Capricorn. And if you want to work with Jupiter, this is the time to do it, and this is how. Now, if you don't want to work, if you don't want to deal with the chart, well, the chart's already created for you for the most part, right? So you already kind of have the chart. You don't have to create a chart for yourself. If you don't want to create a talisman, right? If you don't want to draw a talisman out, then what you can do instead, what I would do instead is I would go into meditation. Like I said, I would create this milieu of Jupiter, and then I would go into meditation and I would talk to him. Jupiter retrograde in Leo. It's, you know what? I don't think it's such a bad thing necessarily, but there might be a planet. What I thought I would do is maybe go to each of you separately and kind of come up with an idea of what to do. But what I would say is, I don't think it's necessarily bad, just because in the retrograde, we don't really know. But what I really do think is that because, since it's in Leo, do you have any planets in domicile or exaltation? Me? No. I have no planets in domicile or exaltation, none. I have two planets in detriment, Jupiter in Gemini and Mercury in Sagittarius, and they're in applying opposition. But other than that, no. Jupiter in Virgo. Yeah, Jupiter in Virgo is at detriment. Yeah, Jupiter in Virgo is detriment, just in case. So Jupiter, if you have Jupiter in Virgo, when we talk with Venus, Mars, or Moon, should we choose nocturnal hours? Oh, good question, Manuel. Excellent question. Let's move on. Let me finish with what we're doing with Jupiter, and then we'll come to that question too. If you have Jupiter in Virgo or Gemini, you should be doing a charity instead, meaning on Thursday during a Jupiter hour. Now, you don't have to elect a chart. You don't have to use an elected chart for this. During a Jupiter hour, on a Jupiter day, you would start with the candle, and then you would do your hymn, and then you do the candle, then you would do your Orphic hymn, and then you would leave and go and do your charity. So remember that Jupiter is the number 4, and Jupiter rules judges, rules clergy. So what I would probably do, because the last thing I usually want to do is give anything to a church, but what I would do is I would find a priest that's in charge of some soup kitchen or something like that. And remember, food service is Cancer, which is Jupiter's exaltation. I'm shocked that I didn't think about this, because I was trying to do I was thinking about doing the Jupiter thing here, but all the priests are really in good shape. I didn't really want to give any money to a priest. But what I would do instead, since you're in countries more than likely where there is a disparity between the wealth and the poor, is I would actually go ahead and find a priest that's in the worst possible situation, dealing with the homeless, soup kitchens, etc. And I would give them $4, or 4 times 4 is 16. I would give them $16 for the next 4 weeks on Thursday during the Thursday hour. Okay, so that's okay, good. So Annalise does have that. Okay, good. So I would do that. That would be, so if you have a planet in detriment or fall and you want to work on that planet, then you would do charity like that. Does anybody else have a planet in fall or detriment that they would like to do charity for, that they'd like me to give them an idea for charity? Mars. Okay, so you remember we just started with Mars. So Mars was the one where, okay, Mars in Cancer. So Mars was the one where I said once again, you could go to a homeless encampment, because, at least that's in America. I don't know if it's the same in Europe. In America, so many homeless people are veterans. And so it would be very easy for you to find a veteran But this is what I would do. I would find a PTSD support group. And I would find like a military PTSD support group, and I would give money. So Mars is 5, so that's $5 or £5 or whatever, or 25, right? 5 times 5. So that's the other thing, is that if you square it, then you're adding to the number. You're adding power to the number. So you can give 5, or you can give 5 times 5, or you can give 5 people 5. Right. So the same thing with for the Jupiter, you can give 4, or you can give 16, or you can give 4 people 4, or you can give 4 people 16. Right. Or whatever, or something like that. But that's what I would do. I would actually find a PTSD support group. But at some point, could you talk, please, about charity for Venus? What kind of institutions or people? Art. Yeah. Art, music. There's a starving artist. Find yourself a starving artist or musician. Believe me. They're starving artists and musicians. Just walk out of your house, or go to Reddit and see the person. Oh, perfect idea. If you ever go to Reddit, okay, right. Oh, here, Olivia, donate to Olivia. That's right. Remember last week we talked about her being an artist. Donate to Olivia. It's 7. So for the next 7 weeks, you could give her €7.
No, I'm good. No, I'm good, thank you.
I mean,
I'm a student.
Or young women, exactly. Young women, artists. But I like the idea of helping a musician, because 7 times 7 is 49. If you can, 7 weeks of 49, and what you could do is you could say, don't spend it until I give you the last installment. And then they'll have almost $50 or €50 to work with. So I would find a musician or an artist who's struggling, also young women, as she said, or a prostitute. You want to donate to a prostitute, a sex worker, a barmaid.
I actually know of one who's a practicing astrologer and turned to OnlyFans because she couldn't make enough money.
There we go.
That would be very.
And she'd be into
What about?
What about
sorry. What about dignified planets, but in the 12th house?
Ooh, good question. Well, which dignified planet is it?
I have
Saturn.
Venus.
Saturn, isn't it? It's Venus and Saturn together, isn't it?
Yeah, Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter in Libra in the 12th.
Yeah, I don't think you need to work on that one because it's already working. That's why you're an artist.
All right.
You're an artist because of that. So you don't have any problem. What's the word I'm using? You don't have any problem accessing your creativity in isolation, do you?
I have problems accessing that Venus, though.
Say that again. You do have problems
in regards to relationships. Like art is working well.
Oh, yes. Then you could. Okay, yes. Then you could use then you could work the Venus. Then so then what you would do is you would be looking for a time to do Venus. So you're going to have to wait until she's in Pisces. And then you could do what we were just talking about. So the same thing would be the case. Venus in Pisces, when she's on the ascendant and the moon is applying to her, that would be a time that you could create a talisman for Venus.
Right.
Or now see, here's the thing. We're all at different, like Layla is kind of a place where she is working with charts really relatively well. So working with the astrology is not a problem for her. For you, it might mean on a Friday during a Venus hour, you go into meditation with her. So you create the Venus altar with her color. So she's got the white. You would maybe put, like I say, 7 flowers. She rules flowers. You could put 7 flowers on that altar. You would use a cloth. You would use a white candle. And then you could create her milieu. You could create a bedroom suite. Or you could create a stage. Or you could create, but it really would be more boudoir, right? You'd create like create a boudoir on your altar. That is her place. And that's where you go to visit her and talk to her. Because, right, Venus in the 12th is not so useful. And certainly Venus in the 12th with Saturn is not very useful and helpful for love relationships. So it might be good to go in there. And like I said, the first question is, what kind of karma do I have with you? Is there room for negotiation? Can we negotiate? And if not, how do I bear this the most happily? What will you give me instead? What do I get? What do I get instead?
Brilliant. Yeah.
Okay, so I say do the meditation, since especially you're really kind of in the beginning stages of the learning of the astrology. So you could start this Friday, or rather, I mean, since it's just the meditation, you could start this Friday. If you were going to do a talisman of some sort, you're going to even just do like the magic square of Venus, then I would say wait until she's in Pisces. But if you're just going to start getting to know her, getting into conversation with her, then I would go into this. I would go into Venus in. I would go into Venus on Friday. I'd start with it on Friday.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Diana, are you saying that you've been doing Planetary Charity, but not working with Venus for the retrograde? So I might continue, but my Venus is combust. What I would do is isn't the rule of your second, Diana, isn't the rule of your second Jupiter or Mars? It's Jupiter or Mars, one of those two. What I would be working on is your Jupiter instead of the Venus, because whatever the planet that rules either the part of fortune, Diana, what's the rule of your part of fortune? She's still with us?
Oops, thought I had it unmuted, sorry. I'm not sure where the part of fortune is.
Okay. What's the degree of the sun?
Let me pull my chart up real quick.
Because Venus
Sorry,
doesn't
I have
rule.
a very quick inappropriate question.
Oh, what's that?
Can I put condoms on an altar for Venusian
Yeah.
things?
Lou,
Okay,
put a dildo on there.
Well, if you use the item at any point, does that mess up the fact that it's an offering? Like, should that be just for that little like tray?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I don't think that's a problem. Clean it, obviously. But clean it, but no, I think it's not a problem at all. But yeah, I mean, I think you can get slutty. You can get slutty with the Venus, especially if you want to get slutty, right? If you want to be more slutty, if you want your life to feel more slutty, then get slutty. You could, she rules the vaginal juices and the semen as well. If you.
I was just thinking of fifth house stuff, booze, cards, sex.
Fabric,
like.
it's clothes, fabric, because it's also fifth house. Booze, like you say, and she's intoxicants, so you could put some weed on you could put a glass of wine and some weed. But see, think about it. Think about which aspect of her you're trying to make happen. Are you trying to make the sloppy drunk happen? That's when you put the weed and the wine on there. Are you trying to make your sex life steamy? That's when you put the dildo on there. Are you trying to bring a man or a woman into your life? That's when you would put, a man, the statue of a man, or Lovers in Embrace or something like that. You see, so are you trying to love your mother more? That's when you see, because remember, Venus is mother too. So we don't, so think about the signification you're trying to make happen, and then play with that.
So self-love.
Wait, you just stopped. Self-love, is that what you said?
Yeah, so I'm going to put my vibrator on there. It'll be perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Right, it's a form of self-love. Exactly. And also, it's a form of self-acceptance and reduction of shame, right? Because there's so much shame around sexuality and especially around female sexuality. So yeah, absolutely. Put that.
You don't even get me started, dude. Living in Spain, I've had people like, the machismo culture exists here. That's all I will say.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm in Mexico. Believe me, I understand exactly what you're talking about. And Olivia, if your whole house is a Venus altar, it's obviously, we can see. That's why I'm saying you may not need to work on, or rather, you may only need to work on it for the relationship aspect. So what I would say, like I just said to Layla, is if you're working with Venus to try to bring in a relationship, then you might want to have a little statuette of two people embracing, or a picture of a couple, or something like that on the altar that you work with. Now, Diana, did you get your chart?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
you're,
second house is Jupiter ruled, isn't it?
yeah, Jupiter's in the second house.
So you wouldn't be working on Venus to make your money better. You'd be working on Jupiter. I mean, remember, he's the significator for wealth anyway, and then he also rules the second house. Is the part of fortune on your chart?
No.
Okay, so where's the sun?
The sun is in 23 in the 6th house, 23 degrees Leo.
23 Leo, and the moon is where?
The moon is at 25 Cancer in the 5th house.
Okay, so it's moon, so it's forward 30 minus 2. What's the ascendant?
Aquarius,
What degree?
19.
Okay,
Oh, wait,
so
no,
that's
sorry. 26, I'm sorry.
26. So forward 30 is 26, Pisces minus 2 is, see, Jupiter is the problem here, right? Because he rules not just the second, but the part of fortune as well. I remember that from the last time now. So
Well,
you're part of,
he's also retrograde. So
oh, and what, isn't he in, wait, wouldn't he also be, is he in Virgo or Gemini or something? What sign is he in? Jupiter.
Aries.
He's in Aries. Oh, and the Mars is in Libra. That's right. So the Mars is in Libra,
Yeah.
Jupiter, right? So is that what it is? Okay.
Right,
So,
they're opposing each other, right?
right. Okay. So yes. So what I would be doing is I would be doing what Layla is going to be doing with Jupiter on the 27th.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't be, because the
Um,
Venus isn't the significator for finances in your chart at all. Jupiter is purely the significator for finances. So you have Aquarius rising, so Pisces is on the second. Is there a planet in Pisces? Is there any planet in the second house?
Not a traditional planet.
Okay, then fine. Yeah, we're not worried about that.
What about Sagittarius?
What about what?
Do you have any planets in Sagittarius?
No, my midheaven is in Sagittarius. So it's on
Oh,
the
yeah.
angle.
So 2 and 10.
Right,
those-
okay.
Those are important houses. Yeah, so I would, to be honest with you, I would be working with him in meditation, and I would do that because you want to find, because the problem is the Jupiter Mars opposition. And so the Jupiter Mars opposition is, that's just that's the karma of your Jupiter. That's the local determination of this Jupiter. And we know that planets tend to be impeded by these particular types, right? Square or opposing a malefic, that's an impediment. What you need to ask Jupiter when you go in to see him through meditation, because you should be meditating with him as well,
Okay.
is one, obviously, is the karma changeable? 2, how to work around the opposition. Because the opposition is always going to create disruptions, interruptions, surprises, all of those, negative surprises, all of that kind of shit. That's a feature, not a bug of the chart. That's the karma of the chart. What you need to know is how you can get around it, how you can work with it, how you can surmount it. Is it surmountable? How to shore up the Jupiter part of the seesaw so that the Mars part of the seesaw doesn't push it down as hard? So it's
Yeah, I guess
Go ahead.
in my favor, at least the Mars is applying to the Jupiter. So
I think that's not so much of a favor. That's a favor. That's
No?
in Mars's favor. That's in Mars's favor, right? So that's in Mars's favor, not in Jupiter's. And so that's the problem. See, if it were separating, that'd be better because it's done. It's already done. It's already behind
Oh,
the
I see what you're saying.
See, we're looking at it as per Jupiter, not as per Mars. Mars is fine. Wait, does Mars rule the 11th house maybe? Or what?
The
Wait,
eighth.
the third?
The 8th
He rules
house.
the 8th, and what else?
That's all that's in the 8th house.
No, what others? Where's Scorpio? Is it the
Oh,
fourth?
sorry. Scorpio is the 9th house.
Wait, Mars rules the 8th? How can Mars rules the 8th and the 9th?
Wait, I'm mixing things up, I think.
It's Aquarius rising, so Scorpio should be the midheaven. But you said Sagittarius is the midheaven, so that Scorpio would be the 9th house, correct?
Yeah. So, okay.
Is Aries on the third house? Is Aries on the cusp of the third house?
Oh, no, Aries is the second house. That's where Jupiter is. So
That's it. Okay.
okay. Yeah, Mars
It's a
is
Mars rule. It's a Mars
Right.
ruled second house. Okay, I thought it was a Jupiter ruled second house. It's a Mars ruled second house. Okay, so now, so Pisces isn't on the cusp. Oh, you've got one of those late degrees. You've got late degrees of Aquarius. So do you have an intercepted Pisces in the first house?
yes.
Are you
Yes.
comfortable sharing your chart, Diana?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you comfortable sharing your chart? It's hard to picture some of the things you guys are talking about.
Yeah.